Stuff like that costs $100,000. With AI, we can move so much faster and so much affordable and so much more customizable. That's a very different game.
How would you describe this concept or this paradigm of vibe coding to the listeners?
When I talk about vibe coding, it's really just about creation through your words in the application or any type of AI tool you're using.
A client says, hey, I'd really love this. Where did it go from that, hey, I've got this idea, to what did it look like for you to be able to say, here's your idea, it's now working?
I use a framework called the Scouts, a framework that I've created to scope the objective, conduct research, outline a plan, unleash the build when we go into testing and optimizing. I do think there's a room for a lot of people to build their own personal tools.
Etan Polinger is a leading AI consultant and founder of MakeSense.ai, known for transforming mid-sized businesses with no-code AI solutions. From marketing routes to building powerful custom applications, Etan empowers non-technical teams to create, automate, and scale fast. Welcome to Using AI at Work. I'm your host, Chris Daigle. Each week, we'll be learning how today's business owners, entrepreneurs, and ambitious professionals are getting more done with smart use of tomorrow's tech. Let's get started.
Right now, every business leader is asking the same question. What are we going to do about AI? If this is you, ChiefAIOfficer.com has the answer. We give you a simple path forward where we provide executive and team training so your people know exactly how to safely use generative AI in their day-to-day. We also manage the deployment and implementation to make sure tools actually get adopted and deliver results. And we'll also guide company-wide transformation so AI becomes part of your operating system, not just another shiny object. The companies that act now will increase productivity, cut costs, and grow faster than their competitors. Those that wait will get left behind. So if you want to make AI work in your business, visit ChiefAIOfficer.com and see how we're helping companies of all sizes finally get results from AI. Welcome, dear listeners, to another episode of Using AI at Work. My name is Chris Daigle. I'm the host of the show. And today our guest is Etan Polinger. He's a friend and the owner of Polinger.ai. And today's topic is something I'm very excited about. And I'm sure if you know anything about the topic, you're going to be excited about it. The topic is, I hate to say it, but we'll call it vibe coding. Although I think after today's conversation, you're going to understand that at a whole different level, and you're going to realize that it's way more than a tech bro activity, that it's something that even as an executive, you can create some powerful resources for your company, for your clients. You can create products to sell, all kinds of stuff, simply using natural language with today's technologies. Etan, before we get started, maybe share a little bit about what you've been up to, particularly in the past, say, 6 months of really digging in on this stuff.
Yeah. Well, Chris, we've been trying to do this for probably a year. Yeah. So I'm very excited to be here, which is funny because we see each other so often. Yeah. But I'm so happy that I'm here. So that's one. Two, what I've been doing. So working on building end-to-end solutions with AI, from automations, agents, applications with enterprise clients. Which is, as you know, surprising because I never did that before AI. It was from the marketing world. But that's kind of, what I've been doing. So taking, figuring out different solutions and using AI to solve them and creating interfaces for people to interact with those solutions. So it's been kind of, a good ride. The last 6 months have been crazy, as you know. So I imagine that's the window that,
So for people that don't necessarily, maybe they've heard the term, but they don't quite understand it. And I know that vibe coding is kind of like just a generic term, and that what we're going to talk about today is actually much more robust than that. But how would you describe this concept or this paradigm of vibe coding to the listeners? Yeah.
I mean, what's funny is I think at first when I heard vibe coding, it seemed like such a appropriate, like a fun little term. You're kind of feeling, you're coding with what you feel, and you don't really know. But now I honestly look at it as what a powerful expression from our mind to creating something. And I don't even know the right word for it yet, but it's really learning the right ways, of course, to do this. Any idea starts to come to life. So that is obviously a very different, conversation. So when I talk about vibe coding, it's really just about, creation through your words in the application or any type of, AI tool you're using. But I think it's really that, I hate to get, I heard Alex Hormozi say this before. I won't quote all of it, but he said something about the more you are more powerful, the quicker you can go from thought to creation. And when I look at vibe coding, so to speak, it's really just a framework of doing that. Coding has always been a work of creation. Now you can use your words to create. I mean, it's really powerful. So that's kind of how I feel about it, or, this playground of it. It's kind of yielding this power.
So listeners, when he says going from, words to coding, that's exactly what he means. Typing in, hey, I'd like an app that could do XYZ. And behind the scenes, AI takes over and starts to code, like computer code an app based on your vibe, your idea. We're going to talk about some pretty sophisticated uses of it today, but I want you to know that is out there with tools that we'll discuss today. And I'll share some of my favorites. I've been vibe coding, I must admit. I'm blown away with what I've been able to create for our clients, for our internal teams, simply by saying, hey, I got this idea. This would be cool if an app could do X. Pretty incredible. So Etan, first off, what tools are you using? And then what would you recommend others use? Because I know that you've gone through a lot, but you're doing some pretty advanced stuff.
Fair. I use a wide variety, but if I had to choose one in my current stack, it would probably be Replit, because it can get you so close. I mean, so close to something so powerful pretty fast. Especially in their newer, they've had some new releases that are just unbelievable. I think, the tools are great, and there's so many. I mean, truly, if I were to say, if I had to choose again, if I had one for the building element, for talking applications, not automations necessarily, even though they have an automation, but I wouldn't use it for that. I think to answer this fully, I would have to give you the different kind of use cases I see when building solutions. And I think that's, a quick rundown would be, essentially we have the whole, just typical kind of chatbot conversation. You're talking to a smart agent that can help you, a co-pilot of sorts that knows custom GPT or whatever, right? I think the next evolution is, or going up is to an agent, where now it can actually go and interact with different things for you. You're still operating it, but it can go and do, hey, help me with my email. Go do that, right? Maybe implement some type of RAG system. It has knowledge, information. It has its own knowledge base. Moving into kind of more of an automation type project, where you can have agents in an automation, but the trigger isn't necessarily you saying something. Right? It can happen from an email coming in, a calendar came up, an event came out, and a full automation happens. You trigger it, but then a whole sequence of events happens that you do not need to touch afterwards. Moving into maybe some type of dashboard project where a lot of data comes into place, it displays it and can do things for you with it. And then to, some type of mini app, a minimum viable product or a full application, is the way that I see these different projects as they're coming. And I'm sure there's more nuances, but just to describe, so each toolkit, so to speak, there's a tool that works best for each one of these things, or tools that comprise of them, right? So if I were to say research, which is a big part of my method when I'm building stuff, I'm all the time researching and bringing in the best practices and documentation libraries, and I'm having AI do all the heavy lifting, right? But some of the research tools might be Perplexity, or might be even Manus. Go and finds a lot of different things for me and creates different reports that I wanted to while I'm building, so I can have the next thing worked out. If we're talking chatbots, you could start with a custom GPT and work with that. You could use something like Pickaxe, which I enjoy to use, for certain projects. So I know I'm going from this, the stack is expanding a bit here, but if I were to think about it in categories, there's really the main LLM kind of choice of where you want to be. Then there's the overall orchestration tool, the one that does the automations that one might want to choose. The one that I'm using the most often is an Etan, because I believe it's, flexible enough. And then there's also the tool of this, where do you want to build these prototypes? I like to build my prototypes in Replit. I do use Windsurf with Claude Code for more complicated things as a whole, or overall, I may build a prototype in there and then I take it into making more complicated things in Replit. And in Claude Code and Windsurf. So that was a kind of a long answer. I hope that kind of brings us somewhere that relates to answering that.
And just from what I know of the space, that's like a very small sliver of the available tools that are out there to do this kind of natural language interaction that results in an app or a website being built.
Oh, there's so many. I mean, there's so many different ones. And I think really the main stuff isn't necessarily the main event apps, like say Replit, Lovable, whatever people are doing to build their prototypes in and some apps. But it's actually the things you can connect to. And that's where all these stuff like the model context protocols, the different tools you can connect to. I have a whole lot more of those than I do the main apps, because it's kind of like all these different superpowers I can enable these apps to do. And I just need to know how to connect them together. And it becomes suddenly a beast.
So let's do this. Walk me through a recent, like a client says, hey, I'd really love this. And where did it go from that? Hey, I've got this idea to what did it look like for you to be able to say, here's your idea. It's now working.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the one that comes to mind, since I've been working on it quite often, but it's there is, we'll talk, I can bring up this sales training environment, that someone wanted to train their sales team. They were bringing on 30 new salespeople that they needed to train in about 8 weeks. This is when we started a conversation. And they were just kind of thinking about what would be the best, way to do that. They've had an idea of some type of bot that's trained on all their knowledge, because they also train people and they have a whole lot of knowledge. This individual has over 500,000 followers for sales training type stuff online. And essentially what went from there is that I use a framework called the Scouts framework that I've created and developed over all these solutions that I've been doing. For those listening, yes, I was in the military, so the name is not just cutesy. It's it has some meaning besides the Boy Scouts that you may think of here. But the way it goes is actually, this is how I also think, is I'm very objective. I have what's the objective? What are we trying to do here? Is always the first frame that I have. And then the next thing is, how do we break it down into actually getting to this goal, right? As any goal-oriented individual knows. So the first step of Scout is scope the objective. So I figured out, okay, so what do you need? You need to train people. Good. Okay. We need to scope. We need to also understand how they're performing. Are they actually using the platform? We need to track that so we can know, right? So the overall objective is to be able to train people, reduce the work and overhead that's required, because there's not enough team to train all these people, right? And also, so once they're on payroll, right? You got to get going. All these people are there. So our objective was to create an environment that would help train his salespeople, as well as give performance reviews and be able to track 7, 30, 60, 90 day. How often are they using it? What are their actual things? And on top of that, using all of his intellectual IP. So it goes from really just breaking down what are the components that come to our objective. We want to train our salespeople. Great. What does it mean? We break it down to all these other components, right? From there, it's about researching, what else is like there? There's Gong, there's, all these other tools that are doing this, right? You don't have to necessarily always invent things, but you can borrow ideas. So looking through what's there, what's worked, what didn't work, right? Also important to see what doesn't work, right? So going through a research phase, and that's where we have in our Scouts, right? The C is conduct research, or conduct recon if you want to follow the fun game, right? So you do some recon. You collect all the information, competitors, people who are doing stuff in this space, all of that type of jazz, using that then to move on to the next step, right? So in the Scouts method, then we conducted our research. We need to outline the plan. We outline the steps, the build out. We create, so this is where this topic of just enough knowledge, right? And the right engineering words, and you can really get far. And this is where we do our PRD, our product requirements document. What needs to be in it? What doesn't? We use stuff called, user stories, which every product manager knows. Most of us don't think about, but we don't have to know how to do that, right? We just need to know the word user stories, which shows us what user story is basically, as a user, I do X, I want Y to happen. Very basic stuff, but it really helps AI, right? So if I says, I want to go into a portal and be able to click to start a script, and it moves in a certain pace so I can follow along and read it. Right? Basic things. And you have that document though, and now you have a guiding post. You create architecture. You see how it's going to be built. You don't have to know all of it. AI just needs to have it. So it helps it, right? So we conduct the research. We then outline the plan. We have kind of the points. If we're doing an automation, we think about what's the starting point? Is it an email? Is it a message from me? All the jazz. We move on from our outline into, in our Scout, right? What's our next thing is you. And this is where we unleash the build. And this is where we go into what can we build as fast as possible? And the reality there is we have to in AI have things testing. I believe that there's so much variables with AI and its performance and style and function and governance that people have to get their hands on it before no assumptions should be made, right? We can get, ideally as quickly a minimum lovable, what are they going to enjoy with this? And at least see it and experience it. Get enough cool, out of it. And then they go into it, and then they can give all the feedback that you can then leverage right away, because that's when we go into testing and optimizing. Right?
That's the T.
That's the T. So in testing and optimizing, yeah. And we test for function, for style, and for governance, kind of like I mentioned, right? So style, does it, so function, does it do what it's supposed to? Did it answer it, right? Did it answer it right? Style, did it answer it the way you want it to answer it? Is it the right format? Does it look way, sound like you? And then governance, of course, is making sure that it's happening secure, but also in an efficient way, right? So we move on from that testing environment where we can then come in this feedback loop into our S, which is when we ship it, right? This is where we create SOPs, playbooks, wrap it around. Now, in this instance, you were asking about this example. What we ended up building is a full-on AI agentic platform that has multiple rooms in it, in this app, right? If you think of a house as multiple rooms, one is where you go and you do a sales role play. It's trained based off all their knowledge. It has an elevating level of difficulty. If you do a cold call with it, it's kind of brutal because it is cold, right? They're like, hi, what? How do you get my number, right? It's very it can be all kinds. They choose the scenario, they choose the avatar type that fits what they're doing, then they jump into a role play. After that, it gives them feedback. But more than that, after they're done, because we wanted feedback on it, it goes to 6 AI agents, reviews all the different components, and pulls back into the platform, and then submits it all into seeing how it works. Right? So the idea, it comes into this really full circle of a full solution. And this is an app. I mean, Gong, stuff like that costs $100,000. With AI, we can move so much faster and so much affordable and so much more customizable. There's nothing that can, you can't compete with something it's like a tailored, so you could buy a nice car or you buy one that was custom tailor made for you, right? Yes. That's a very different game. And I think we're there.
I've heard this, this concept of SaaS is dead, right? And you hear that and you're like, oh, there's the headline or whatever. But after hearing this, I realized, okay, my options would be, let me go buy an off-the-shelf Gong to use to effectively train my sales team. Or, you know what? Let me throw a little money at Etan. Let me give him a couple weeks or whatever long, and what I find amazing about this, and listeners, this is important for you too, because you may be saying, whoa, this is all way over my head. Etan didn't get a degree in computer science or coding. He wasn't building websites or apps prior to this stuff. These tools landed. He started just like all of us do with any tool. What does that button do? Oh, let me try that. And through repetition, he's now to the point to where he's building something that's pretty robust. I got a brand new salesperson. They don't know anything about my products. How do I train them, let them get some practice reps, and let them get deep analysis on feedback all within one application? I want that. Etan, one of the examples, we were speaking at, in Salt Lake City, a couple weeks ago. You were just kind of playing around on the laptop and you were asking me about, oh, what are you doing? And I was, at the time, one of the things we do for our clients is, or our prospects, when somebody comes in, we'll run, research on, okay, this is the company. And we do, like a Big Four style analysis of how would this company and in this industry benefit from, say, generative AI being deployed in their business. It didn't take us, didn't take us a long time, but we have so many requests for these coming in. There was a backlog and I was like, man, that's not a good look. Right. So I told you what we were doing. And as you sat there on your computer, I think we timed it. It was 2 hours. It went but we were also eating Chinese food in between. You asked me a few questions. I gave you a little information. You typed a little bit. And within 2 hours, you had created a front end where I could simply enter the company's URL. And let me think. Okay, so it went from there into Perplexity to do context research on the company. It passed that from Perplexity into Claude and ran it through a prompt that we use to do these, to instruct the large language model to do the research. It got the result. And then it sent it to gamma.app, which is a tool that we're very, very fond of here at Chief AI Officer, but it will take raw text and it'll turn it into a beautiful presentation. And within 2 hours, my backlog was done. You built that thing and all I had to do was copy paste URL, copy paste URL. And we had thousands of these created within minutes. So that's how easy this stuff is. what I'm interested in, because I've kind of gotten started with it. I was like, man, I'm not technical. I have no interest in like getting in the weeds on this stuff. But Google AI Studio came out a few weeks ago, and I can't wait to tell you and show you what I did. But what is the learning curve been like? Because you started even just 6 months ago, it was harder than it is now. But what was that like?
Absolutely.
What got you started, and what's that journey been like to get to where you are now?
Well, I mean, I think the best is truly, this is just the best. And I'll say this because I did spend more than one should. Right? I've done, AI training that does exceed, at this point, over 6 figures of programs and certifications and all this. And I'll be honest,
personally have invested in yourself.
Yeah, personally invested in my own little degree since it came out, immediately started what certification can I have? What? And of course, Chief AI Officer was, I think, probably the second or up there on the early ones I did. I did a few others, but I think the reality, all of that was incredibly strategic and really gave me the picture of how to use, how AI works. I think the implementations where it was really most interesting to me was seeing non-technical people AIify their way of thinking. And I think that's where I started, was looking at how all these people, in the marketing world were all over this, right? All the course creators, all the whatever. But I was curious to see, how are they building it? What are they thinking? What's their process of just thinking through it? And that was part of my education, was that, just paying to see what people are thinking and how they're thinking about taking their IP. But then that was one of my first projects that I started doing for people. And this was the highest demand thing initially, which was, I'm going to take your IP and AIify it for you, right? I'm going to make a digital you that knows and can talk to people and just quantify you. And it was working really great. I mean, that was first testimonials I was getting, just nonstop on that stuff. And it was really powerful. But the education was playing with it and trying to understand almost how does it, how to take the different interactions of it and make it, first thing was as human as possible and as a person. And I think because I started my journey in that way of like, how can I make it as close to the person I'm trying to replicate? It actually led me to a really interesting way of thinking about AI and how it works, and learning kind of ways to try and, what does it matter in your perspective? An adjective and its effect on the whole system prompt, like all these things that you don't think about, versus, the role, but also the perspective, but also the lens, and also the experience, and also what they read, right? And also examples, that you can replicate. And how do you use, I knew, for instance, that AI, is NLP and natural language processing. I don't know exactly what that means, but I know that I use it to process. So why don't I use that by telling AI to do that for transcripts and start to go through a process of what someone who is really good at that would do. This was like kind of a fake it with AI till you make it a version of, I'm going to mimic the experts I need to mimic to get to the result I want to get on these specific things. And I think that's where that was the real education, I think, of just going in there and building. Now I've built over hundreds of chatbots and things like that. And it's there's different types of work, but the how AI operates. And I think when we talk about vibe coding, we talk about, applications. It's again, who's really good at building applications? Well, software developers are, engineers are really good at architecting it. Well, if we're saying that AI is taking over development, would it be good for me to understand engineering principles of applications so I can have AI do it in a smart way? And that's where I went on this long, 6 months thing with IBM and all this stuff in books. But the reality is, most people just need to know vocabulary, language. I think it's this is where it comes. It's like understanding the words. If you know just enough engineering words, you really start to change the conversation with these tools, I think.
Interesting. Because I'm not at that level yet. But makes total sense. What are some of the low hanging fruit opportunities for somebody who's like, yeah, I'll go get a Replit account. I'll get a Lovable account. Let me try this out. What would you suggest would be a good, not too big of a scope, but something where they can actually build something where they're like, wow, this thing works, and they can do it, maybe on their first or second attempt?
Well, it's an interesting thing that you mentioned the Google AI Studio, because I would imagine there's actually funner, quicker wins you potentially could have there, because I've already done some unbelievable. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's amazing. I love it. Again, so all these tools, you'll run into the same problem, which is why I'm going to give my advice in reverse on this, but it'll be the same. I'll get to the point. The advice in reverse is all these tools are really great, and it'll take you to a certain point where you will need to take it to a different notch. How to actually download it, deploy it, connect it to things, make it usable for other people, all these other considerations. However, to get your first win, I would say a focus, and I'm saying this because you want to take it to a point where I don't necessarily want to scale something out. So I would go into an internal tool, something that you want to use for you, right? For you, or for a, internal tool for your company, something that other people can log into locally that you don't need to like build this whole monster for, right? And take one particular problem that you think, or idea, right? To make it a win in your company, definitely make it something valuable. But if you're just playing around and you're trying to get a win, try and figure out something fun that you're trying to solve or do, and then say, okay, this one problem, and make sure that that one problem isn't too big of a problem, meaning not too many components in it. When I said before that we disaggregated it into all those components become different features. So what you would want to do is have a problem, but have a feature within that problem that you want to work on. And say, okay, I want to be able to have Replit answer my Slack, send me all my, create a dashboard for all my Slack messages. All I wanted to do is to pull the messages and display them in a nice way. All the ones that involve me in one place. It doesn't seem very exciting, but it gets very cool. But suddenly you have a dashboard where it's all there. You're not jumping between 100 channels. It's all in maybe one dash that looks nice and shows what you got. Yeah, I don't know, just an idea. And having the idea today because I have all these Slack messages in like 6 different channels or environments, right? So maybe that's a step one. Just aggregate it. And don't worry yet about some of the other elements. Well, what do I do if that once I have it? Because then, if you want to, you can work on a next kind of piece of that puzzle. It's okay, well, now that I see it and I'm able to pull this information, well, wouldn't it be cool if it just drafted responses for me? Okay, cool. Why don't I have that? Okay, well, what does it need to draft responses? And that's the question you need to ask yourself. What does it actually need to do what I want it to do? Right? Then it's kind of like this. I want it to be able to draft responses. Cool. What does that mean? Well, I likely need to connect some type of language model. I likely need to have some type of logic. Ideally, it has context on who I am and what I'm doing, so it replies well. But you may want to just start by, again, don't try and build the whole thing. Say, I just wanted to draft a response with AI. It could be a bad response initially, right? But work your way there. So there's ways to go about it. You can architect the whole solution if you're an engineer. But what I'd recommend starting out, solve smaller things and see how they work. And while you're doing them, have AI tell you, hey, how does this work? Right? Or ask it before you build, hey, what do we need to do to make this work? First, tell me, don't do anything yet. Just tell me what does it need to work. And then it will tell you. You say, okay, that sounds interesting. Tell me more about that. And how does that work? And what else would I need? And I can tell you, I don't think there's a better school than what you could do with AI. Because, and this is maybe controversial, but the reality is you are hands-on with your teacher. You're in the trenches with your teacher, and if you're asking it the right questions, you're going to get the right answers. If you're asking, all kinds of questions, you'll get to all kinds of places. So I think the questions do matter, don't get me wrong, but you're in it. You're actually doing the stuff, and you're seeing it work or not work. You're wondering why. After you do the same mistake 5 times, but you do it really fast with AI, then you now know. So it's kind of like a rapid learning environment for those who are willing to step into it. But just on a small win, I would say, jump in, solve one small part of the thing that you want to solve.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'll give you an example, for me, because I'm not quite thinking, I think in AI, as we call it at Chief AI Officer, but I'm not thinking as the software creator, the software developer, right? But we have a survey that we run. We sponsor a lot of Vistage events. And if you don't know what Vistage is, it's like a local CEO mastermind where CEOs get together and they help each other with their business. And we were sponsoring the events, and we wanted to get information from the people that were there to really just kind of what's the landscape? Where are people at with AI? What are they thinking? Are they doing it safely? Are they even doing it at all? So we had created what we thought was pretty slick, a Google form, right? They fill it out. And at the end, we could see all the answers. That was cool. But we're an AI company, man. It's the best we can do is a Google form. I thought, at least for presentation, what can we come up with? Mm-hmm. So I went into AI Google Studio. Listeners, you can try any of the tools that are out there to do this. And I got the spreadsheet and I attached it to, and guys, if you've never seen the inside of this, it's like going to ChatGPT. It's just a box and you enter whatever you want to enter. So I entered that and I said, hey, I need an app that will ask these people these questions, and give them, a score at the end. And that was about the extent of it. And I hit enter and away it went. And within a couple of minutes, I now had a web-based interface where somebody could, there were the questions, there were the multiple choice answers. They could select it. And then there was a next button. And I was like, you know what? I'd rather not have to hit the next button every time. So I went back into that box and I said, hey, instead of the next button, whenever they make their selection, move them on to the next question. Oh, but keep the back button in case they want to change it. I hit enter and away it went. Tested it again and that was fixed. And I went through it and with, I'd like it to do this. Okay, here you go. It'd be cool if it did this. Okay, here you go. And my experience was exactly what you just described. As I started getting in motion with it, I started like the matrix kind of unfolded. I was like, oh, I could do this. Oh, and I just built one today. And I'd love to share it with you because I'm going to brag a little bit.
Yeah.
But please. One of the things that we do a lot with clients is help them identify where do I start with AI, right? Pilot project identification. And ideally, I want to be able to have them press some buttons and get some help figuring that out. So I built an application now. It asks them, it has them come up with the idea and it has them score on 6 categories and it will give them at the end, it'll say, hey, this is probably not one you should start with, or hey, this is great. But AI actually enhanced it and it said, oh, and here's why. So now it gives a summary of why it gave it that. It's just been incredible. So
that's so good. That's so good.
Yeah. I'm no expert, right? But I was able to do some basic things like that. So as Etan's talking about this, it's coming from the lens of somebody who is extremely capable of building way more than just like a bell or a whistle on your business model. But I want you to understand, you don't have to spend the next 6 months, deep in the trenches as he gotten his 10,000 hours in 6 months. You can start today, right? But I want you to listen to this interview through the lens of where you can take it, like how sophisticated it can get. So, Etan, I know that you and I had a conversation, I don't know, maybe a few months ago, and in the Chief AI Officer community, that was one thing. We were subject matter experts on business. A lot of them had gone through Chief AI Officer certification. They were out there using the tools, but they were self-identified as non-technical. But this is something that you told me, hey, they don't need to be, they need to be able to do this, but they don't need to be technical. And we started letting people know, hey, Etan's going to do some sessions and we're going to train some people. Why don't you explain to me who showed up, like the rookies at boot camp, who showed up? What was their kind of experience and what did you turn them into in X number of weeks or whatever it was?
What a fun thing that was and is. And I think it's what we did, right? And by the way, it's not that I wasn't training on this for 6 months, guys, just to be fair. It's been a few years now. Over the last 6 months, just to make sure that no one's, but with that being said, it's not like before that, like we said, I was in marketing and whatnot, 10 years military.
You were using AI, but you weren't doing anything technical. Yeah.
No. Oh yeah. Well, it became more and more technical, rapidly over the last year, let's say. Right. So let's do this. So, what we did, so we launched a program, and this program was to create builders, because really there was a few reasons. One, I couldn't believe that not enough people from our community are building solutions yet. Two, there was too many conversations that end with a ChatGPT demo, and there was not how to actually take this and make this into something. And as someone who was working as a consultant in this and selling services, I also noticed that it was very hard to sell stuff that remained in a chat window versus here's a deliverable you can have with AI. And it moved me into that discussion of how can we get more builders who can actually, help us out and see how it does. And we said didn't need to be technical because, well, I wasn't when I started, certainly, right? It was kind of an idea of principles. And I think mindset too. I think I think there's a level of starting from this place of it is a gift not to be too technical right now. And it's a gift. It's a gift. Because when you're too smart, which a lot of us have been in our own environments, we get stuck. But when we're completely dumb in a new environment, we're able to do, we think we can do more than we can. And ideally, if we embrace the fact that we just we think that AI actually can do more than we think we can. Now, with the right frameworks, that's what really enables it. And this is really funny, right? Because I think some here, I know if people are listening, if you ever seen someone like a person like, man, I'm so much smarter than that person. How the hell are they doing that? Right? This person's dumb, I wanted to be that dumb person for all the developers out there and all these people who are hyper technical, build these things and think that someone like me could impossibly be doing what I'm doing. And it was fun. And it is fun. And I think that's the part is like, you don't have to be technical. You can actually take your business experience and become the asset that all these companies out there are needing. And you do this as well as I have. So when we started this program, right, I had all sorts of people. There were a couple that were unbelievably technical, come from like an IT, super developers.
Yeah.
90% of the people had zero technical history. A lot of them, I would say, I don't know, 90%, a good amount didn't have any technical, right? And then somewhere in the middle, kind of, all of them were certified, chief AI officer folk. They knew AI strategically, certainly, in and out. But taking it into that like physical realm of building and developing and going in and not being afraid to like, we're going to build something right now. The testimonials we've seen and the people who are just, the step-by-step approach that we took in this course and that I took in this course was based off their feedback. I can run on sometimes, creating step-by-step playbooks to really take anyone. And I think that was what they were getting out of it, is this kind of implementation ability of I can now build things. And many people built their first like chatbots that they didn't just build on a ChatGPT. They turned into a product, right? They took it. Now they can put it in a nice widget on a website. And it's a product. And even though that might be simple for some of the listeners, be like, how the hell did they do that? The idea of productizing AI into, I take this custom thing and now I can make it to your brand on your site and your environment with your materials. Really powerful tool already, but giving people all these, they were able to go now and, this is from what they, what I've seen them say. I'm not just, saying that, but it's they can now build, a lot of them can now go out and build. I'm not going to say that everyone, whoever was following along and sees all these things and has the playbooks can now go and build. On top of that, we give them, I gave them all these custom GPTs it's not GPTs, it's using Claude, but it can build, a lot of this stuff. So they got tools to do it. So I would say the funnest thing was the confidence of seeing people actually go in and build stuff who have never done anything like that before. Yeah. That was the funnest thing for me by far, I think, was seeing like, all right, I'm just going to do it. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to go into it and see what happens,
Yeah. Were they surprised that they were able to do this?
I would say there were a lot of people who were, I think some people were surprised and some people were, it was more like I think, as I mentioned, I think there's a way of like, if you get the right framework, you learn something new, you're happy, you're unblocked in that way. But you still have to get the biggest barrier of certain things. You have to move, blindly, or in a way for a bit, especially when you don't know what you're looking at. And you have to trust that you're following a certain steps. Every entrepreneur, for instance, knows this, right? You're just looking at one step ahead of you and you don't necessarily know where it's landing. You don't know. If you keep going forward, you'll figure it out. And you do. And everyone does who does that, right? And I think in AI, when you're non-technical, that's what it feels like. So I think there was this level of seeing people embrace this uncertainty of sorts, but within it, learn a new trusting in their new steps and skills that they end up somewhere that is really cool. Even if some of the steps they did not know what is going on yet, right? And it's kind of like a process of, yes, they have all the frameworks and tools now and they know a lot more of what's happening. But in the process, that moment of, I know that I need to do this. I'm going to tread through and just see what happens, and seeing, people build chatbots, agents, messing around. Someone had a problem in the community if they built a little app, and we did a deep dive on it in a community session to like, how do we actually, all right, let's build this app. And I built it in an hour, right? Or like a version of it that's almost there in an hour. And it was more to unblock. They knew where they were going. It was just how to ask the right question. I didn't do anything technically different. I didn't come in with some code that oh, it's just this and that in the code. Nope. I just asked slightly different questions that led to the result that AI knew how to do. The mantra, I think, if someone figured it out elsewhere, people were not, we're all very smart, but AI is pretty smart. If someone figured it out late night drinking cola somewhere, AI could figure it out if you ask it the right questions. Okay. That's what I think. It could be, people might, afterwards they'll get messages. No, how could you? It's like, we're not all that smart. I mean, people have figured it out. 50% of coding is Googling.
Yeah. This is, because people can go, like, there's plenty of content being produced on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and all that kind of stuff. And that's great. But if you're kind of just absorbing something here or there, you'll gain some knowledge. But I really like this idea of a set sequence, we start with this and then we moved on to this. It makes a ton of sense on how these people were able to go from, I'll give it a shot, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, to, oh my gosh, I could sell this app, or I could, this just saved me hours in my role or my department or whatever the case might be. Very cool. Because I explained, AI Studio was pretty easy for me to use. I just started messing around with it and built some stuff.
Hell yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
How has it, since you've been working with these tools with previous releases, how much easier has it got? I would say,
Google Studio, for instance, I've played around with it a bit, but I didn't take it yet to production or internal or transferring it to another company, or, I haven't yet gone through logistics of what it means to use that as a product that I serve people with.
Yeah.
I would say that the building, getting to a very quick, really cool thing, hyper impressive, AI Studio, something crazy, right? I think Replit is really great at getting more depth, but you can also, it's gotten way easier, right? I mean, Agent 3, which is the newest release on Replit, for example, can go much longer and thinks much wider and deeper. So it could build end to end certain things. If it stays focused, if you're keeping an eye on it, and you're making sure that it's kind of.
What do you tell me about this? What do you mean, if it stays focused?
Well, because AI, so this is notorious right now in in any of these building things, is going to build what you want and then 10 other things that you didn't even know or asked for.
Yes. Okay. That's happened to me.
It's why? I didn't ask for that. Why? I don't want even that button. Why would you add that button? That's not over delivering. That's just a random button that you just added there. I don't even know, it doesn't even have any functionality yet. You just added it there because whatever. Right. Or worse, that's what you see. There's a whole lot that you don't see. That's going to cause a whole lot of problems later. So there's, prompting to make sure that it stays on point and focuses. Or if there's a problem, there is a level where I think the, creative problem solving and problem solving as a whole, just being a rational person, if it brings up a problem, it's that can't be the problem. In fact, it's worked on this, and that. Look harder, right? If you're trying to solve something, just being a rational person with it and not necessarily taking everything, you don't have to be technical to debate it, right? You have to be that can't be, there's just no way that that's the issue.
You're telling me that debugging the code is as simple as saying, hey, this didn't work, fix it.
Well, there's a few things, right? Yeah. I would say that's a good starting point. The problem, though, is AI is going to find too often the one thing or the first thing that it finds as an issue, as an example. So it says, I found the issue, and it declares it. And I hope there's at least 1 million people laughing right now because it's so true. I found the issue. I know what it is. It's this thing. And then you go and is there fine, fix it then, right? And then it goes and it fixes that and it still doesn't work. And you're well, good, fix it again. It didn't work. It's well, I found the issue.
Yeah.
Every single time. Yeah. So instead, here's one trick that I hope that helps some people, right? One thing that, we spoke about in this conference, I mentioned this to people too, but it was to say, as a whole, look, I'm not, the exact prompt I don't have it off my head, but it's the idea of look for why this is happening, but don't stop at the first thing you see. Find all possible reasons for why this is happening. Prioritize them based off likelihood of being the issue, right? And then create a plan to address them before doing anything. And show that to me first. And now you're looking at it and saying, okay, and you could do one of two things. You could accept it because you still don't know what the hell that is. If you do know, perfect. If you don't, you could do one of two things. You could say, one, if you're not sure, explain that to me if you really want to understand. Two, you could then take that to a different LLM and say, hey, I'm facing this issue in my app. What do you need to know to help me solve it? You can ask that back to your agent. You can bring that context to that other LLM, Gemini, ChatGPT, whatever. wherever you want to play. And then you can take that context and say, hey, it's found these issues. What do you think it could be? Even if it doesn't know the code, it could be just a smart friend who you're like a phone a friend who doesn't cost you the credits that Replit might cost you to do that analysis and to work deeper. So that's kind of a way to be cost effective about some of this, right? So working with other ones to help solve some of those issues, but don't stop at the first problem. Find all the potential problems, rank them based off what you think is happening. And that is helpful for those of us, especially if we don't know, if I can't just open the file and look at the code, which these days is, definitely much easier. But if you're a step more technical, by the way, you can say, hey, which file is this in? Which files are relating to this? Just show me those files. And then you can copy the code from those files again to another place. Or if you connect, we can go on and on the different levels. There are more technical that are way, smoother for technical. But if you're not technical, you can be just fine, is what I'm trying to say. Like there are more faster ways to do it if you are technical on some of this. But if you're not, you'll be fine too if you're just working with it.
A couple of takeaways from that. The way that you describe the problem solving, where it's like, hey, tool, identify why this is probably not working, find all the places that, like, it reminds me of, a year ago when people were telling chain of thought prompting. Think about the solution step by step, right? And people got better results from that. So I'm seeing this translation of how I'm prompting with ChatGPT into actually how I direct in a vibe coding environment. A lot of those prompts, that way of thinking about prompting could translate in. And then secondly, it's almost like the way you're describing this now, you're the director and you've got a team. And you tell this team, hey, I want you to build that. And then when it doesn't work, you can go over here to this other team. Like you can take it from Replit and go into ChatGPT and say, hey, how come this guy's stuff isn't working? Right? That's kind of what it sounds like here. Yes. And that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. Running a business, running a team. Interesting.
That's if you were to look at my browser, like during a given working day, I'm working, what's on my screen right now? You would see Claude open, ChatGPT open, Manus open, probably Replit or Windsurf, and all of them are probably doing something. And it's not because I can't have multiple chats running in one place, and Manus particularly can run whatever up to X amount of queries at the same time. It's just that I might be, there's things that I enjoy doing with some others. I don't recommend other people do this. It's not economic. In some ways, it's unbelievably economic, but if you're really just starting out and you don't have any cash for this, don't do that. But the reality is, even if you do $20 a month on each, you're still at like $200 a month for pretty much all the most incredible tools on the planet to ever be created, which is wild, right? To run a business, to run this type of business, right? So, you can go again at the peak if you're really wanting to maximize, but $20 a month can get you most usage that you will need on most of these. And if you're working on some others, you'll probably be fine. So for me, it's really just about certain things that I experience to enjoy. I may leverage something like Manus to build a playbook for me on the task that I need to do later on that one thing. So then I can just go and follow a playbook that's been created to me based off documentation that I fed it versus trying to figure it out when I get to it, right? That's the world of if I had a great assistant, right? And this is something that I learned from a CEO I was privy to and I was mentored by, where he was just saying, the best assistants, obviously, they're a step ahead of you, right? They're preparing stuff for you so that when you get there, it's ready. You're showing up and the things have been kind of set up in a way that they're thinking ahead and around of you, right? So how can I have AI do that is what I do often when I'm working on all these different projects, is having it figure out stuff for me for later. Because I don't have to sit there. I just say, hey, figure this out. And then when I get to that later, now I have that set up for me. So I don't have to.
Yeah.
That's just operations thing, like a little operational AI life.
No, I'm learning a lot. And I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you. If Google AI Studio wasn't included in, our Google business account or whatever. So for all of you listening, if you're in Google, you've got access to that tool I mentioned just a second ago. If it wouldn't have been included, I don't know that I would have taken the time to say, because to me, it just seemed like a big stretch. There's no way that I could do that, right? But because it was free, I got in there and I was like, oh my gosh, this thing's working. So for those of you that are saying like, oh, that's this interesting conversation, but that's not for me. look, if you got a Google account, you probably have access to Google AI Studio. Just go to, I'm sure Google would prefer you went to Google rather than Perplexity, but go to Google, type that in, and there's going to be a link. And once you get in there, listen to exactly what Etan said. Just figure out what you want to do, the scope, right? And then start typing and then hit enter and watch yourself. Like, don't break your arm patting yourself on the back, but watch you build,
it's so good though. It is so good. It is so good. And it's so surprisingly good. I mean, I think this is really, I think, on a broader context, on the macro of this, I think when you said SaaS is dead earlier, I think it's far from dead. I do think there's a room for a lot of people to build their own personal tools. I mean, there's no reason why an AI studio where you can't build, for instance, your own full content machine for yourself, right? I mean, you can do images. I already did one that was like a full on, upload your photo and create headshots for you, right? There's no reason why you can't do your own, any of these tools. If you want to take it to the next level and make it into a product, you could do your own everything. I did a branded icon creator just because I needed it. I was like, I need to do an icon right now. It's completely random, but I can do it in minutes, so why not? Right? And I think that's with Google Studio, by the way. I did a bunch of these as messing around with it to see what it can do. And Nano Banana, of course, is one of the best image editing and image models out there right now. Then it's like, oh, perfect, right? You could just implement these tools into it. So I do think people should just mess around and have fun with it and see where it goes. But I also, so I think in a SaaS dead world, I think not necessarily, because taking that into something public is still useful. But most importantly, I think people with expertise that are building solutions to their problems that other people have and just make it easier for them to do the thing.
Yeah.
Right. So an example might be, the automation I told you about for AI builders, right? The feedback kind of condenser, which basically when we're working on agents and chatbots, one of the things is you get feedback on it, then you have to go and figure out the system prompt. And some of these system prompts, I don't know about you guys or whoever's listening, but mine, the one that I just was working on earlier is like 18 pages long. Right? You can get to a point, that's not where you're going to say, oh, that's not efficient or not, whatever. It's like, okay, you see the bot, then tell me. The idea, but the concept though, making a change can affect a lot of things there. So you have to be very careful and you have to discern where is it happening. So it can take some time to come in and then refine the agent's capability or his way of thinking across rules and tone and all these other things that it affects. And it's like, those who don't know what a system prompt is who are listening, this is, the main prompt that affects is like personality and perspective and how it's thinking when it gets a prompt, right? It's like its personality, knowledge, or whatever. So the goal there, if we're looking at it then, is how can I condense that time from someone giving feedback about it to getting ideas on how to fix it to implementing it, right? So I built an automation for operational use for builders that basically, there's a form that they submit the feedback on. It collects the feedback. It injects with the feedback the system prompt that we're working on right now in its current version, sends it to an AI agent. This sounds like a lot. It's really not that much. It's like 4 or 5 steps, right? And when we learn how to do it, it's very simple. You build this agent. It reviews it. It has a structure. I'm going to look at it for, take information from it. I'm going to understand what the user wanted. I'm going to look at the prompt, analyze the section, see why this might be happening, dissecting it as a AI, optimization expert, right? Looking at all the different elements and then suggesting an outline for it. And then just creating either a prompt for it to redesign it in a LLM for you. And then uploading all that into a Google Doc for me to review when I'm ready to review it, when I have time. And then I just work with all the things I have to start to work on it already versus doing that analysis myself, which might take, 30 minutes to an hour for me looking at it. Not to mention, we're all human. We might get sidetracked in it. We're like, oh, what about this thing? Maybe we should add this thing to that.
Yeah. For sure.
It keeps it focused on what do I need to do to optimize it based off feedback, which means I can provide a faster, better service for my clients, which I don't need to wait now for a while to optimize their agent. I get all the tools I need based off my expertise already, but given to an AI to help me do that part. So it sets me up like an assistant would, right? Here's your brief. Go on and now spend your 20, 30 minutes on this, make it go back instead. So that's a tool, for instance, and in the broader context that I gave to on our AI builders call this week, I gave it to everyone. Just say, here's the code, use it. And it's because I think that's where it's at.
Yeah. How I'm contextualizing this is I was looking at my kid's homework and the teacher had written a note, and it was obvious the teacher had read the homework, right? They didn't just like give it a score. And man, I was thinking, man, how labor intensive is that? And what you're just describing is essentially you were the teacher grading their homework. Like, hey, here's my project. That would be reading a second grader's homework, like no big deal. Debugging or evaluating somebody's app, dude, you would have spent so much time if you didn't build this tool. But can you go buy that tool anywhere? No. Do any of your friends have this tool? You can say, hey, can you send me the link? No. You had this very specific, like just for you application. And you said, oh boy, it'd be easy if I could do this. Tap, 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 tap. And now you're able to do that. It's incredible. They're able to do it without you, which is even more incredible. So guys, we're getting to the top of the hour. Obviously we just scratched the surface of this. I know by the time this episode airs, the next cycle of the AI Builders effort that you do, taking, I don't want to call them non-technical. The new word I've heard is post-technical. Like just being technical isn't even required, right? So I know that the next cohort, by the time this episode airs, will already have started. But just in general, if people want to like witness what you're doing, obviously they can join the Chief AI Officer community and see, because I know you're posting a lot of like wins and ahas in there. But how else are people finding out about like your thoughts about this post-technical environment of coding and creating apps?
I think the best place truly is the Chief AI Officer community. However, LinkedIn is a good spot where I do, when I'm not swamped in projects, I post more there. But the community is where I post all the time. Definitely in the builders community, every now and then on the broader community. But I think there's definitely a place that would be the place to go. And then LinkedIn would be a second, place to do that, which would be, Etan Polinger, ETA at Polinger. I'm sure it'll be in the notes somewhere. Hopefully, that would be it for the most part. Because the reality is I'm not like an educator, guys. I did the course because we needed more builders and stuff like that, right? So when we talk about, showcasing, I'm actually working in the trenches on projects. I'm building, developing. This is not I'm learning to share more about that information, and I want more people to know about it and have fun with it. But that is, I'm coming kind of from like, okay, I'm out of my project thing. Let's talk for a bit. Let's see what I can share with you guys. Yeah. And then I go back into it. Right. And that's kind of the flow.
Yeah. So listeners, we've covered a lot of tools on here and all that kind of stuff. Everything is going to be in the show notes. Here's what I'd say. Go to the show notes, click a link, sign up for a free account for the tool, and play with it. Click the next link, do that. That's how you learn AI. You don't learn it you make discoveries by listening to podcasts or whatever, watching the video, but how you really learn this stuff is hitting the keyboard, clicking the link, asking the question, like all those things in the AI tools themselves. So Etan, thanks so much for being here, man. This is, like you said, it's long overdue. I don't think it'll be the last one with the speed at which this, this technology continues to improve. And I think it's only going to be a bigger topic as more people listen to things like that and say, I clicked on the link and oh my gosh, I built something. Right. So I think that this is just going to snowball into like a huge topic in the AI sphere. And, thank you for taking time out of, I know that we were a little late because you were still wrapping something up with a build. Like you're not kidding. You're actually still, and as soon as this ends, I'm sure you're probably going to go back to building. So,
that's true.
Yeah. So you guys heard it directly from the trenches on this one. So again, thank you so much, Etan. Thanks, listeners. We'll catch you on the next episode. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Using AI at Work. Don't forget to subscribe for more conversations about how to use AI at work. And a special thank you to our sponsor, Chief AI Officer, for empowering businesses with AI education and training. Visit their website for a free AI readiness assessment and AI strategy guide to help you get started using AI at work. That's www.chiefaiofficer.com. Follow us on Twitter at the handle Using AI at Work, and visit www.usingaiatwork.com for free resources to help you harness AI in your role.